Hello, lovely folks of YouTube, Ren here. I wanted to talk about a subject that is not exclusive to witchcraft, but definitely has a lot of importance if you plan on doing a witch garden like mine. And that is using the phases and astrological signs of the moon to determine when the best time to work in your garden is. This is not something that comes from witchcraft. This is something that has been around for ages and ages and ages. You can find it in a lot of the old farmers' almanacs. So this isn't something that's exclusive to us. This is a bit of occult or hidden knowledge that has been passed down through farming communities for centuries. But we can still utilize that. It kind of helps to get us into that occult mindset when we are planning and executing our gardens. Now, I want to give the caveat before we start that I don't always follow this simply because I don't have time. Sometimes the ideal time to get out there and plant is not an ideal time for me. Sometimes when, the moon is in the right phase in an astrological sign, it is pouring down rain and you just can't help it. But, so, don't think that this is like a hard and fast, like you have to do it this way. But it's just a cool extra layer that you can throw on top and, see if you get better results with it. So, like I said, this uses the moon phases. So the general concept is that the same way that the moon can affect our emotional state and that sort of tidal pull on us, it has that same effect on plants. So the two main ways that they break this down is by the moon phase and by the astrological sign. We'll start with the moon phases. So the moon phases just kind of give you an idea of the general flow of the energy. So you basically can break it down into just the light half and the dark half. Light half being waxing and the dark half being waning. During the waxing moon, all that energy is moving upwards. So moving up into growth. So we always think of the waxing moon as being the time that we are focusing our energies on those plants that have above ground growth, anything that's moving upwards. Waning moon, of course, is the opposite. The energy is moving downwards. So this is a good time for plants whose primary growth is under the ground, like root crops, but also a time to kind of focus on cultivating the soil, and also doing things like weeding and getting rid of those plants that we don't want because it's bringing it downward and a diminishing energy. If we want to break that down a little bit further into the actual different phases, they're generally accepted to be 4 phases. Waxing, crescent, and gibbous, which is sort of crescent is the skinny moon and then gibbous is after the half moon. And then waning, gibbous, and crescent, which would be, again, the shrinking half moon, and then when it goes down below the half moon into the crescent moon. So during the waxing crescent, that's the new moon to the half moon. The idea is that you want to focus on those plants that grow above ground, but that have outside seeds, like flowers, grasses, annuals, things of that nature. Whereas between the half moon and the full moon waxing, you're doing the above ground plants that have inside seeds. So that would be most of your fruits and vegetables, like tomatoes, cucumbers, etc., etc. The waning gibbous moon, so from the full moon to the half moon as it's shrinking, that's when you're focusing on those plants with root growth. So your carrots, your beets, things that grow under the ground, but also things that you want to establish a good root system on. So your trees, your shrubs, even some long-term perennials that you want to build a good root system on. That's the time to work with those plants. The waning crescent, however, that half moon to the new moon, is a time that we don't really get any growth at all. We say that that's the best time for things like pruning, weeding, pest control, just getting rid of things that you want to keep out of your garden is that time. Okay. So while the moon phases give you an idea of just the general current of energy, the astrological sign that the moon is gives you a more specific focus of that energy. Now, just like the sun, the moon moves through all 12 signs of the zodiac throughout the course of its movements. Because a moon cycle is only about, I think, 29.5 days, 28 days, somewhere between there. It's, somebody knows the exact number, but I don't. But the moon only spends about 2.5 days in each sign, whereas each zodiac sign is about a month. So it's a much shorter time period that the moon spends in each astrological sign, which means that it goes through that cycle much faster. The way that those astrological signs work is the same as it is for the sun signs. They're the same astrological signs that we use for sun signs and for all the other astrological signs. But we can take that knowledge of the astrological signs and apply it to our garden. So, for example, to start with the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. These are signs that the general atmosphere of these signs is considered to be barren, hot, and dry. Because of this, they are not good signs for any type of plants. If you can avoid it, try not to plant in any of the fire signs, generally. However, these signs are really good for things like weeding and pest control, because this is a time when that energy is focused on sort of banishing, getting rid of things. So you don't want to plant a plant you want to keep during a banishing time or during a really aggressive fire sign, but it's a great time to pull out a plant that you don't want coming back. There is one exception, and that is onions and garlic. I've heard it said that onions and garlic can be grown under either Aries or Sagittarius because those plants have that Mars affinity. But no other plants will grow well, and it's easier to just remember if it's a fire sign, just don't plant anything. So the polar opposite of that would be the water signs. Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. These are the fruitful, cold, and moist signs. These are the best signs for planting anything in, especially above ground crops. So anything that grows above ground, if it's a water sign, it's great to plant. This is a time where if you prune during these signs, it's actually going to encourage more growth in the plants. And Cancer in particular is said to be the best sign overall. So if you have to do any planting, if you can't find any other day, try to do it under Cancer. At the very least, if you prep your beds during the sign of Cancer, it's said that any beds that are cultivated and prepped during that time, regardless of when or what you plant in them, they will be fruitful. So that's something to keep in mind always. So your earth signs. This is where things get a little different. The earth signs of Taurus and Capricorn are considered to be fruitful, cold, and dry. These are the signs that are best for transplanting root crops, so anything with that below the ground growth. Taurus, it's said if you prune during that sign, it's going to encourage root growth. Whereas during Capricorn, if you prune during that sign, it strengthens the branches on the thing that you're pruning. Virgo is a little different from the other two earth signs. This one is a barren sign, barren, cold, and dry. However, it's said to be a very good sign for grasses and grains. Virgo is also the best time for making or turning compost because for some reason that's just a thing that it does. I don't know a lot of the background behind why these things were brought about. This is just something that's been passed down for ages and ages, and I don't think anyone really looks critically at it anymore. It's just like, this is the way it is. So I'm just sharing this information that I know, but I don't always know all the background behind it. Just letting you know. But yes, Virgo is great for making compost. All right, so your air signs. Air signs get broken down a little bit in a weird way too. Gemini and Aquarius are your two air signs that are considered to be barren, hot, and moist. These are the best time for harvesting. So, not really want to be planting during this time, but for, taking in your harvest, this is a good time to do it. They do say that Gemini is a good sign for beans. I'm not sure why that is, unless there's the whole concept of like all the beans in the pod is resembling the twins. I'm not sure, but there's got to be something behind it. But anyway, Gemini, Aquarius are best for harvesting. Libra is fruitful, hot, and moist. Libra, not too surprisingly, is the best time for flowers. So planting to encourage flowers, planting flowers, annual flowers, flowering vines, pruning in order to encourage flowering. These are all things that are best done under Libra. Of course, you can always default, like I said, to Cancer is a good time for everything. But if you're looking for that nice cutting garden, then Libra is going to be your friend. So you can put these two systems together, the moon phase and the astrological sign. So for example, say you wanted to prep your beds for the spring. The best possible time to do that would be sometime during the waning moon, because the waning moon is good for cultivating the soil. And when you're in the sign of Cancer, because then obviously, you know, that's your good time where everything that you do from then on should be successful. Weeding is best also in that waning crescent. So like between the half moon and the new moon during a fire sign, either when the moon is in Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius. It's that if you weed during that time, then you're really going to be effective at getting rid of it and they're not going to come back. Planting flowers would be best during a waxing crescent. So from that new moon to the half moon as it's growing. That's when, of course, the above ground seeds and flowers are supposed to be good. And under the sign of Libra, because Libra is also good for supporting flowers growth as well. So mix and match, combine it as best you can. Like I said, this isn't a hard and fast rule. I don't always follow it because I ain't got time. I would love to. If I were like a full-time stay-at-home, all I did was my garden, then you'd bet I would have all this planned out on my calendar. But unfortunately, work and life gets in the way of that. So, but if you have the ability to stay at home and plan out your whole life around your garden, then you can utilize this. So maybe you'll get some use out of this. And for the rest of us, I mean, it's still really cool info to know, you know, and you never know. Sometimes the calendar does line up right where you have a day off. You know, that that waxing moon in Cancer just happens to fall on a Saturday and you're just like, yes! So anyway, that's it. That's how we garden by the moon signs. That's what our old knowledge tells us, that old Farmer's Almanac knowledge. So I hope this information is helpful to you. I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.